Hey, y'all, and welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of the Career and Technical Education Podcast. I'm Brandon Grace.
And I'm Randall Hust.
And today we are here with Deshone and Ruben Gastelum from the ATC and their law enforcement instructors. How are y'all?
Doing good.
Good.
Javad and Ruben, you guys are, again, the epitome of most of the teachers that we have working for us with Lubbock ISD in the area of career and technical education. You guys came from industry. You each had your different roles out there. So if you would, kind of introduce yourselves a little bit, tell us your background and why you got into education.
You want me to go first?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So I'm Ruben Gastelum. I'm a former police officer in New Mexico. I was a police officer there for 8 years, starting in a small town called Moriarty, just outside of Albuquerque. And then I moved to Hobbs, and I was there in Hobbs until I moved here to Lubbock. What was the other part of the question?
Why'd you get into education?
Oh, why did I get into education? Because my mother-in-law, she's a teacher in New Mexico, and she has always told me, hey, you should be a teacher if you decide to lead law enforcement. And so I was working here in Lubbock for CPS. I actually worked for Child Protective Services, and she sent me the link and said, hey, guess what? Lubbock ISD is hiring a law teacher. And on the description, it had nothing on the description for the job. And I was like, well, you're hiring a law enforcement teacher. I was law enforcement, so maybe I qualify. And so here I am.
Here you are.
Here I am.
Here you are. Javad?
Well, I started out my career as a juvenile correction officer. Did that for about 8.5 years, and just periodically got a phone call about teaching. And it's kind of one of those things. I enjoyed working with young people, and I had a passion for working with young people. And now we're looking at 14 years later, and I'm still doing it. I enjoy it, and just kind of one of those things. I didn't know it was my calling, but I'm here.
Both of you guys have brought so much to the programs here at the ATC and for Lubbock ISD. Tell us a little bit about what you guys have going on. We have listeners from all over, really all over the nation. And so different areas have different types of programs. But, you know, our focus, we have two different focuses, obviously law enforcement and court system. So talk a little bit about our overall program here.
Okay, so for the law enforcement program, I teach Law 1 and Law 2. The law enforcement program, we try to keep as hands-on as possible, going through everything from law enforcement history all the way up to things like building search, felony stop, active skills that the kids will be using if they choose to go into law enforcement later on in their careers. So we're starting to teach them those early skills, try to get them a little bit ahead if they decide to go into industry itself. Try to run the class as hands-on as possible. There's always room for improvement, and I'm trying to improve it every year, but we try to do a lot of hands-on. And just recently, this summer, we were able to get a use of force simulator that teaches the kids shoot, no-shoot situations. Obviously, we want the desirable outcome to not shoot and stuff. So teaching those students that sometimes law enforcement, they have to make decisions, very quick decisions. Sometimes those decisions kind of suck, but it's been real humbling for the kids. I'm actually doing that this week, and so they've been enjoying it. So
That's awesome.
So I teach most of the legal part of things and the court side of the class. So in my court system class, we are working on, just trying to get those students confident in speaking, making decisions on their feet as far as going through the court case, reading the information, knowing the statements, writing direct and cross-examinations, opening and closing arguments, doing those types of things. And then in my legal writing course, we're opening up and using our mock courtroom. I have a mock courtroom in my classroom that we utilize on a weekly basis. We try to get in there and use it. But then we're also working with our community in our municipal court, and we participate in teen court. And so we have a teen court session that we do once a week. And last week we went out and did one with a minor incident of tobacco paraphernalia, and represented a young juvenile and gave him that second opportunity to not be a part of the legal system, but the possibility to go out and write a letter or do community service to help that student to be punished for that mistake, but not to be a part of the system.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you guys have got just a great overall program. One of the things that we really want to focus on today is the practicum and internship. I know in the state of Texas, we pretty much every content area has it set up to where you can go into a practicum type experience. Some of those are paid, some of them are unpaid. I know in construction, I had several that were paid. I know, Mr. Grace, you've got several different practicum kids working.
Most of them were paid, and I've had to do a few unpaid over the years. But yeah, I mean, they're both valuable. either way.
Absolutely, but law enforcement is a little different. It's not like you can just, hey, you're gonna be an officer this week. That doesn't really work that way. But you guys have developed a really great system, and your students are getting a really great experience, and we'd like to share that today. So, kind of give us an overview of how your practicum setup works. Both of you guys teach your practicum class, right? You actually teach it together, and you have quite a few students in there, if I'm not mistaken, right? How many kids are y'all serving right
at
now?
the time we have 23 students in our practicum course, and the way our practicum course is set up is to allow students to get a law enforcement experience from all the different areas in our field. So we work with our local police department, Lubbock Police Department. We also work with our Lubbock County Sheriff's Department. We work with our district attorney's office, work with the local Texas game warden, and then we also work with our with DPS and our local state troopers. And so the way this is set up is that these instructors, these professionals come out and they teach the students things here on campus, or we go out to campus with them also. Here this past week, we had the local police department came out. They brought out the drone officers. Then they brought out the K-9 unit, and they brought out the mounted patrol. And they just came out and gave a presentation, answered questions, and kind of give those students an idea of the different areas that they can be involved in all these different agencies.
So one thing that I've always noticed is y'all do have a ton of people coming in all the time. I mean, I call ourselves the safest school in town because there's always police officers in and out. Y'all always have great demonstrations and great, everything from Texas Rangers to Sheriff's Department, to local PD, to school PD coming in and talking to the students about what it's like to be an officer. And also, like, whenever we go in, it's like, if you want to reserve the lecture hall, you got to make sure you do it early with y'all. That's right. But what I have, me and you have shared students over the years.
Yes, sir.
Because, there is always that cross between an IT and a law enforcement. Whenever it comes to, curriculum or whatever, like you talked about the drones coming in, that's an IT field or an engineering field, but it goes into a lot of different things. So while they're out there, you have the people coming in. What are some of the topics that y'all cover while they're going through and discussing with y'all, or discussing with the students about law enforcement?
A lot of times our students really have a lot of questions about how did that officer get to that point to where they are. They always have that question. How did you become part of the mounted patrol? How did you get on the SWAT team? How did that happen? And officers are doing a great job as far as answering those questions and telling them, hey, you have to work patrol first. You have to learn how to talk with people. You have to learn you have to learn to do your job before we give you another advanced job for you to be a part of. And so they do a great job of answering those questions as far as the professionalism and the training that comes into play. And students always want to ask that one question: how much money do you make?
Right.
And they're not uncomfortable with telling them. They it's public information. If you want to know, I'll tell you right now, but it's also public information, and giving that experience is why they love their job and why they've been in their job for so long.
That's awesome. Tell me more about the different activities that they do, because obviously you work with 5 different departments. All of them are not talking about going out on patrol or anything like that. What kind of different experiences do they have?
So coming up, actually just this next week, we're actually going to be bringing in the district attorney's office, and they're going to be bringing in one of their juvenile prosecutors. Next, they're also going to be bringing in one of their future investigators coming in. So we just try to give them a broad overview. So with them, that's who's coming in. We also take them to court with the district attorney's office. Our students have sat in the 3 years that I've been here. Our students have sat in every year on a capital murder trial. Wow. They've gone and been able to see the opening statements. They've been able to see those opening testimonies and be able to understand, at least for the court side, how do you start crafting those things even before you get to law school? Because unfortunately, we can't just push the kids into the district attorney's office. They've got to go get a law degree. But now they're starting to build those skills. Well, when it comes to our law enforcement partners, we've had the sheriff's office. They'll come in. They also they've taught crime scene, teaching how to do crime scene investigation. DPS, they've brought the students in, they brought their instructors in on how to identify ballistics and how do you match up a bullet to a casing and how do you match that with the gun that fired it. So we're teaching them all these other different skills that we just don't have time for in our Law 1, Law 2 program that are a lot more technical in terms of the job that they're going to be doing in that future. So they're getting that head start in order to be able to jump into that career, at least knowing something and have an idea about where they want to go before they even get there.
Yep.
That's really cool. The game warden one has always been the most intriguing one to me.
Yes.
What do they do when they go with the game warden?
So with the game warden, they go out and they set up different scenarios. So as far as early in November, it's hunting season. So they're going to set up a scenario where they may bring out some dove, and they're going to let the students go out and kind of do their research as far as what they can look into. A lot of times they don't understand game wardens don't have to have a search warrant for things. So game wardens can go up and they can check that cooler, and they can check your gun, and they can check your vehicle and make sure that you are preserving as far as our natural resources. And so they go in and they search, and then once they go in and do their scenario, then they come back and they write a report. They also have them do a great job of going out and searching during fishing time. So fishing license, and getting them educated on, hey, you have to have a fishing license. You have to have a hunting license in order to be able to go out and do those things. So all those different our advisory groups do a really great job of giving those kids that experience as far as what it's like to go out and do that job.
I also want to add one thing with the game warden that I think is really cool. So our local game warden will send our students out to the local fish markets here. And they go undercover during school, during our class time. They go to the fish markets and they start taking pictures. They're looking to see, are there any illegal fish at these fish markets?
Wow.
They take the pictures. They give them to us. We send them to the game warden. Game warden will go out there and verify and issue citations
Our entire
to the people.
legal department just went nuts.
Yeah. So,
I just didn't know that was a thing that they
That's
did
pretty
that.
cool.
It's like I had some students back in the day, not students, friends back whenever I was in high school. They would do like the TABC thing,
Oh, yeah.
where they go
Yeah,
in and
yeah.
try and try and catch the people off guard or whatever. But it's the same thing, but with fish. I mean, who would have known?
Yeah,
Whatever. I
absolutely.
didn't think the game warden did that. That's kind of cool.
And we do have several of our students, not necessarily regarding our practicum, but we do have several of our students who also work with TABC and the FDA, working with FDA, actually doing
nice.
undercover stings for cigarettes as well as for tobacco as well.
Nice.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Wow. What's been the response from the industry partners? I mean, I know you guys work very, very closely with all our guys. This practicum experience is no exception to that. What are you guys hearing from them about not only our students but the experience as well?
Well, with our industry partners, we've developed a great relationship with them. And so now we're to the point to where we've developed a good enough relationship with our sheriff's department, for one, that they come out and they do some recruiting. We're to the point now where we're getting kids involved, and they're going out and getting jobs. They're working. They're starting out at entry-level positions as far as being detention officers and making a pretty nice salary. You know, they're starting these kids out at $22, $23 an hour, and with salary and benefits. And so here this past year, we had 5 students go out and apply, and I think we have 3 students that are out there working. And the year before, we had 3 or 4 students go out, and now they're working and being correction officers at the Lubbock Detention Center. So it's working out. It's great to get those kids a start. But not only that, we get a lot of students recruited to South Plains College. We even put kids into the college field and going out and being a part of the law program out at South Plains College.
And we're trying to expand that every time, right? So we're trying to expand it. We're working with dispatch. I know Mr. Deshone here. He has several former students who works for Lubbock PD Dispatch, and so we're definitely trying to continually expand what that looks like. Where else can we put kids into jobs? Not just with the sheriff's office, with the detention facility. We brought the TDCJ out here just a couple weeks ago, and there's some interest there. A lot of students are like, hey, I could go work for the state prison system. Well, 18 years old, you're going to go make $50,000 plus a year straight out of high school. It's pretty impressive.
So I know you guys have a very strong advisory committee, which a lot of those guys participate in your practicum program, but you're adding to those all the time. I know TABC's recently come on. Yep. You mentioned working with 911 telecommunications as well. Talk a little bit about your advisory committee and how that helps to guide your program.
Well, the advisory committee is the main partners that kind of help us to be able to get those students involved in with their part of coming out and being a part of letting those students with them giving back to the community, as far as giving back to the school district and the students in the ISD. Very important. They keep us up to date on training. They keep us up to date on what jobs are opening, for these young kids to be involved in. Not only that, giving them opportunities to be a part of, like I said, the sting operations with TABC, to possibly opening doors for them to be 911 dispatchers now, and that could be a good possibility. And it's all about the interest of those kids and giving them the best opportunities.
Absolutely.
And add to that, I think they hold us accountable. I think I've asked the question in our advisory meeting before: where are our students, or not necessarily our students, but where are your recruits coming into your agency? Where's the deficiency? Well, last year they told me, guess what? It's in report writing. So what am I focusing on in classes? Report writing, right? So they hold us accountable in terms of where and how we're teaching these students, so we can constantly push those students that are adequate or even above adequate into the workforce, and have our students be that number one pick, not number 30. You know what I mean?
Right.
We want them to stand out, and so they're going to hold us accountable to the way that we teach our students as well.
That's a great point. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about all of our advisory committees, because that question gets asked in every single content area. Hey, what do we need to be doing? What are you seeing in people that you've hired that came through our programs, and what do we need to be doing? And so I very much appreciate that you guys are adjusting and adapting to that, for sure.
I mean, the same thing. We had our advisory committee yesterday, and it was what do I need to do to better serve y'all? Get my kids ready to go out into the workforce, and it's important to have that people that are in it that understand. Okay, this is what we need, and y'all doing it with y'all's law enforcement, because you people think law enforcement, oh, it's the same thing. You go out, get criminals out. No, it changes. With the way the world changes and all this, you got to make sure you're staying up with everything.
Right.
Yeah, because the reality is, we're producing a product, and that product is our students, right? And these are our consumers, whether we like it or not. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Right.
And so, if we're not producing something our consumers want to buy, then what are we even doing, right?
Right.
Talk to me about, speaking of that process, law enforcement's a little bit unique in that there's some gap time in Texas, at least. I don't know about other states, but in Texas, you cannot become an officer until you're 21 years old. And so obviously our kids are graduating at 18, 17 sometimes. How are you guys overcoming that gap and keeping them interested in the field in that time where they're having to wait to actually become an officer?
I'll speak on South Plains College, and I'll let Ruben speak on as far as with the detention center. Yeah. But with South Plains College, we have their instructor come out, and he's giving those students an opportunity to receive scholarship money. All they have to do is email him, and he's giving them scholarship opportunity. And getting those kids set up, they come into college at 18, and they go to school, get their associate's degree, and then at that point, once they're close to 21 years old, they can go into an academy of some sort. Lubbock PD Academy, or South Plains College even has their own academy, and those students can go through their academy and work for a small agency. And I advise a lot of them to work with a small agency, because you get to do more than just patrol. When you work with a small agency, you get to do a lot more things. So trying to fill that gap by sending them off to get an associate's degree at least, and it gives them an increase in pay once they go that route.
And before I start getting into that, I want to make sure, Mr. Deshone here, he's been doing this for almost, 18 years now?
Too long.
He's been doing it for too long, okay? So he has a lot of success stories, and so he's actually brought some of those success stories in, and one of the biggest ones that I can remember is he brought one of his former students in I think he's done firefighting. Now he's going into law enforcement, and he was talking to our students, and he was telling the students, and this has stuck with me, is you need to be intentionally boring for the next 3 years. And that just struck me, because that wasn't something that I ever struggled with. But I understand, as times change, it's going to be a struggle for these students and stuff. So when he said that, I was like, yeah, they just need to be intentionally boring for the next 3 years until they turn 21, so they can do their job. But so on that note, when we try to keep those kids boring, we want to keep them as boring as possible. And so he spoke about the detention facility, 18 years old. The prison, 18 years old. Dispatch, 18 years old. So we can get these kids into industry to fill that gap so that they can be intentionally boring for the next 3 years before they join law enforcement or wherever they want to go, right? And so because we do know that, if students aren't out there actually doing something, they're going to be doing something bad.
They're going to be doing something not boring.
Not
Yeah,
boring.
right.
Exactly. And so
Unboring.
if we can keep them boring and keep them busy,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. So we're always trying to look and how can we fill that gap? So that's kind of what we've come up with there. We also last year started a certification program for security level 2 training, and so we'll see. We'll see if that pays any dividends, but it's something that is offered now, and so that's another avenue that we can get these kids into something. So
Another tool for their toolbox for sure.
right.
Absolutely. Our audience, like I said, is teachers, administrators, really across the nation. What would you guys tell folks that maybe they're just starting out their program or thinking about starting a law enforcement program? What advice would you guys give them as far as moving forward and all the way from, how does it look when we start, and then how do you get these kids really connected?
Well, the biggest part is build those relationships with those students. Find out their interests. Get them involved. If they're not involved in something positive, they'll find something to get involved in, and most of the time it'll be something negative. So as far as growing a program and building, get them involved. Skills USA, great option for them to get involved. They find their people, they find their group, they get involved. They find people that share the same morals and values that they do, and then once from there, Skills USA, I've seen it build lifelong relationships for some students that you couldn't get them to say anything in class, and then now they're leading, they're showing some leadership skills. They're talking to students that go to other campuses and people they would never meet, but then they meet them in Skills USA, and now they're not just friends in the program. Now they're friends outside of school, and so it's a great option to get those kids involved and get them involved in something positive.
That's awesome.
and I can't give him enough credit. Like he built this law enforcement program. He's very humble about it. He spent long hours building not only relationships with the students before I even got here, well before I got here, but he built relationships with our community partners. Mm-hmm. He put in the long hours, the long meetings, working to get Lubbock PD on board with the 5-week schedule that we have, get the DA's office, the game wardens, and the sheriff's office and DPS all to work together on a 5-week schedule and do that consistently forever. You've been here 7 years, 8 years now. So I cannot give him enough credit. He built this program and it's successful because of him. But I can't emphasize enough that relationship with those departments. Mm-hmm. And us in law enforcement, being former law enforcement, it's easy to lose that relationship very quickly. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, law enforcement's going to be like, okay, hold on. We're going to pull ourselves back because we don't want any of that liability. We don't want any of those issues or anything like that. So the fact that he's been able to keep this successful for so long, keep those relationships going, I can't give him enough credit.
And I won't accept all the credit because Mr. Gassam he's great to work with. He keeps me accountable, and we bounce ideas off of each other. I don't know it all. I've done it for a long time, but I don't know it all. I like to have some new eyes come in and say, hey, we need to push forward, and let's push this a little bit more, or let's kind of go in this direction. I'm kind of old school, but with Ruben's young mind and always creative and always thinking, he helps keep this program going.
And one thing besides just good teachers is having a good administration with the CTE department or whatever. They support you to do that, because not all CTE departments I've seen don't do that.
No.
And to be able to have such a good one here at our school and the other ones that have great programs across the nation, it comes down to the administration with the CTE department to help grow that and make it a successful program.
I agree. That's one thing I was going to say to any administrators out there. Law enforcement looks different. There's some thing. Ruben's like, "Hey, I really need a taser." I'm like, "I don't think we can do that."
I asked Dan this morning for a whole building. I don't know if I'm going to get that. My students were being a bit loud, and law enforcement gets loud.
Absolutely, but it's being willing to think outside the box and be innovative and listen to, because the reality is you guys are the ones that have the relationships with the students and with the partners. As you guys are doing these practicum experiences, you guys are the ones making those connections. My job is to support you, right? And so being willing to think outside the box and, don't think, if you're an administrator out there, don't think this is going to look like your English class, because it's not. So just be willing to help and be willing to support, and great things are going to happen. I do want to give a shout out to Paul Flores. He's another law enforcement teacher that we have, but he doesn't teach the practicum side, which, this is why I wanted to bring you guys in. But other than that, man, thank you guys so much for being a part, for sharing your wisdom. If anybody out there is starting a program and would like maybe some of that wisdom, how can they reach you guys?
You can always reach me through email. It's going to be javad.deshone, DESHONE, at lubbockisd.org. Reach out with an email, and I'm more than willing to give you all the knowledge that I have. I mean, I know it feels good to start a law program and see your law program grow and see students get involved. And it's a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's a process, and you build your process, build your foundation, and just watch it grow.
That's awesome. That's very cool. If you build it, they'll come, right?
They'll come.
There you go.
Field of Dreams.
Mr. Deshone, Mr. Gaslin, thank you so much for being a part.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening to us and helping us kick off season 2. And look forward to the next one.
Thanks, guys. You can watch and listen to all episodes of the CTE podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube Podcast, and LubbockISDTV.com.